Hello everybody. Welcome to Poverty Porn. Who's benefiting from recession in Britain? Pawnbrokers, payday loans companies, pound shops? Perhaps we should add in some of the UK's major broadcasters to that list. Over the last year, there's been an explosion of factual programmes exploring life on the breadline and lives dependent on the welfare state. Many of these series and single films are achieving slot-winning viewing figures and generating lots of column inches in both the tabloid and broadsheet press, and creating an explosion of reaction on Twitter. But is this simply reflecting real life in Britain, or is there something else going on? A recent Times article by the TV critic Andrew Billen said a new genre had come into being, which he called poverty porn, and suggested that both here and in the US, broadcasters were parading these people for our entertainment. Are these shows the modern-day version of the social documentaries Britain's been producing for decades, or has something fundamental changed? On our panel is Emma Cooper, commissioning editor for Docs at Channel 4, Katie Buchanan, who is executive producer on Channel 4's Skint and works for Keogh Films, Stevie Hambling, who featured in the BBC One series We All Pay Your Benefits, and Tom MacDonald, commissioning executive for Documentaries at the BBC. Let's just talk a bit about the commissioning of these programmes. Emma, why do you think there's been a rise in the popularity of programmes about recession in Britain?
I mean, I just think it's a massively exciting time because for the first time ever, in the heart of prime time, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, there are a whole vast array of shows which millions of people watch, which are highlighting huge social issues. So the fact that people are really coming to them, I think, is massively exciting, and it is showing that people want to see what is going on in the UK, and you know, whether we like it or not, the gap between the rich and the poor right now is fucking huge. So, you know, I think it's brilliant that more and more of these shows are being commissioned. You know, I had a series on last month, which was about how to get a council house. Now, you wouldn't, that's not very sexy, to be honest, as a, you know, but it was amazing, and lots of people came to it.
And why do you think that was? What was it about that show that made it so popular?
You know what, I don't really know, because it was a very honest, truthful, observational documentary at its heart, but I think people want to know where their money is spent. I think people were genuinely amazed and could not understand how the housing situation has got so bad in this country. I didn't think they realised, and I think a lot of these shows, yes, they're a good watch, you know, they are.
So do you mean that it explained something that the viewers perhaps hadn't understood? Is that, and is that one of the things you think about when you commission them? Are you, in a sense, trying to make something clear?
Yeah, sure, but I think it's about getting the audience in, and then with a certain array of beliefs, and then kind of going, actually, it's not really that way. So the Twitter response to Council House was quite interesting. I think people came to it thinking that they would see a lot of people unworthy of getting housing, and actually what they saw was a terrible situation where you might be 664th on the list to get not a very nice house. So I think it's about kind of confounding a lot of people's kind of beliefs which aren't necessarily true, and you've got to take the documentary cameras into those spaces to show people and to allow those people to have a voice. I mean, Skint was amazing for that. When was the last time, you know, the long-term unemployed of Scunthorpe got a whole camera crew to say, all right, tell us your story? Amazing.
So from your, so just to be clear, you commission them thinking that they are informational, that they are providing, they're educational, they're providing the viewers with information that they previously didn't have, or do you commission them thinking that they're primarily entertainment?
No, because I'm not an entertainment commissioner, I'm a documentary commissioner, but you know, at the same time, I want lots of viewers to be exposed to things that, you know, we should be talking about in this country. So, you know, sure, quite a lot of those programmes have really, really interesting content, and I don't think we should apologise for that. And I don't think it should just be thrown away and said, oh, it's just entertainment. It's not, it's really important.
So Katie, let's talk a bit about Skint. So when you came to make Skint, what were your kind of primary objectives? What did you want that series to do?
Well, I think we wanted to give a voice to a group of people that are frequently talked about and rarely heard. And we wanted to do that in a sort of unmediated way. So there's been a lot of programs on TV which, you know, look at this group of people through the eyes of slightly world-weary police or hospital staff. And we wanted to get a really fresh, unmediated kind of point of view.
So how did you do that? How did you set about making sure that that was how the programmes were made?
We just spent a very, very long time up there working with people, 7 months on the ground, on the estate. A very, very long time explaining to people, hanging out with them, gaining access, and working very, very closely and carefully with them afterwards to make sure they were happy, that they felt well represented.
So tell me about the voiceover. When did you decide to have that kind of voiceover on the show?
Well, I think the thought had been there from the start because we're the company that made Welcome to Lagos. And that had a voice that was, it was quite an authored voice. It had a point of view. It was written from the perspective of the people that we were filming with. And I think we, from very early on, felt that we wanted to do something that equally had a point of view, that was coming from somewhere. I think it's very easy to assume, because you've got sort of sensitive, important subject matter, that you need to do a very pared back, neutral voice. But I think that in itself implies some sort of judgment. And if you can actually see things and convey how the people themselves see things, that you know, you're communicating something extra there.
But it's an interesting decision, isn't it? Because it was quite jokey in parts. It was almost ironic in parts. And, you know, as that clip just showed, the taking a break at Her Majesty's pleasure, it sort of is bringing a kind of entertainment sense of value to the documentary, isn't it? And there are, you know, I think the reason that people connected Skint with Shameless is partly because of that voiceover, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, Shameless wasn't something that actually came up in discussions. As I say, our sort of link back was Welcome to Lagos. That was where the kind of the thought came from. And I think there was a key moment for us in the edit when, you know, having put together storylines with a sort of standard, quite neutral voiceover, and you're watching them and things aren't quite working, and then we suddenly sort of thought, well, you know, how would they see it? Some of these stories are quite everyday to them. Yes, they would be sympathetic, you know, they would care about the people, but it's not a sort of shocking thing. And there's humour, and also people don't go around depressed all the time, even if they're living in tough circumstances. Some people just wake up optimistic. People have a laugh, people tell jokes. And I think, you know, we felt that there was a truth that the voiceover was reflecting.
Yeah, I can see that. So it's a very authored kind of voice. They're quite similar, aren't they? So did you feel almost like that was, you'd got a format there, that it was a...
Not entirely, and the worlds are obviously very different worlds as well, and have very different sort of sets of problems. The people that, you know, live on the Westcliff estate have got a different set of problems from people living on a rubbish tip in Lagos. But I think some of that sort of energy was and kind of humour and optimism was something we also wanted to have for Skint.
So Dean was obviously a very central figure in Skint. When did he emerge as the sort of key? Was that always the plan, that he was going to be so central?
No. So I think we knew when we first met him that he was special. Because I think what's so interesting about him is he's sort of funny, he's empathetic. Yes, he's had 7 kids and, you know, they're surviving on benefits, but they're a functioning family. They love each other. They try, they care about each other. He cooks, you know, they go on holiday. So we knew from early on that he was pretty good. And then when we got into the edit, it became clear that he had, you know, his story related to a lot of themes that were going on with other stories, and we could sort of split him across the whole series. And, you know, he became then the lead character.
And on Skint specifically, did you let them see the show before it was broadcast?
Yes, anyone who said that they wanted to see their contribution could see it.
And did anybody object to their contribution? Or
No.
And what sort of, I mean, obviously it generated, we'll come onto social media a bit later, but obviously it generated quite a lot of noise on social media. Did you, how did you need to kind of look after them as a result of the broadcast?
Yes, yes, we did. I mean, we took that kind of aftercare very seriously. You know, we advised them not to look on Twitter, not to go online at the time, but people do. You know, we were in daily contact with them all during TX. But I think what was quite interesting was, that particularly with the sort of younger ones, they had sort of expected it, and quite a few of them said, I can take it, it's nothing I can't handle, which was interesting because I think they're probably much more literate than, let's say, I am with social media.
Or did they just enjoy their moment of celebrity?
I think some people will enjoy that too, yes.
Tom, let's come on to Nick and Margaret and Stevie, which you were part of. Tom, just before we come to Stevie, why don't you just explain what the premise of the show was for those who didn't see it?
So the premise of the show was to pair benefits claimants with people who are in work. And it came from, I mean, everyone will have noticed that in every newspaper, whether it's the broadsheets or it's tabloids, there's a sort of obsession with people on benefits at the moment and the welfare state. And of course, in the broadsheets, that's absolutely about the sort of deconstruction of the welfare state and what's happening with the welfare state with the government. In the tabloids, it tends to be a sort of very clear sort of polarity between the sort of strivers and the scroungers. And our idea was to sort of take that polarity and see, actually, if you paired people in real life together who sat on both sides of the divide, would their position change? And actually, the question in the series was, would you change people's benefits? Would you cut their benefits? Would you increase their benefits? Should they be on those benefits? But what I hope the series did, and it was two-parter, was sort of slightly go beyond that question to other questions about the value of work, whether the welfare state works in terms of helping people get back into work, why people are on benefits for a long time. And I think it also, as well as giving a voice, some of the things that Emma and Katie have been saying obviously chimes with me about giving people who don't have a voice, but it also gave a voice not to just people who are living on council estates and on the breadline and claiming welfare, but also people working in Britain who feel angry with the system, not because they're claiming from the system, but because they feel the system isn't fair to them. So, I mean, I'll let Stevie speak for herself, but one of the things that came out for me, and I was surprised by, of course, before you start filming, you imagine that the cliche of they're going to have an iPad, they're going to have the expensive trainers. It actually shocked me, and this sort of taught me that I'm naive, that those things were real, that actually those sort of things that you imagine, you read in tabloids, they're real. That doesn't mean there aren't reasons for them and there's not sophisticated things going on behind it, but it is real, and that sort of grassroots sort of worry and concern that too much money is being spent on welfare, that people aren't being paid enough, it's real at a sort of fundamental level. And so what I was hoping was that we would have a sort of range of voices in the film and that it would give people the chance to change their views as they went along.
So Stevie, you're a care worker, I think.
Yes.
And you were there with Liam, who was on job seekers allowance, I think, and he was a graduate who was not being able to find a job. But in your view, I think you thought he was rather picky about the sorts of jobs that he would do with his degree. Is that right?
Yeah, because he had a 2-1 in media studies.
Yeah, and we all know how useless that is. Yeah.
Well, he wanted...
Guaranteed not to get you a job,
Yeah, or he only wanted a job in that because he'd been to university, got into debt through doing that. He was adamant he needed a job in media studies. Wouldn't travel to London to do it, wanted to stay in Ipswich. Now, there's not many jobs in Ipswich that do media studies. So, and because he had this 2-1 degree, he kept saying to me that he was bigger than a lot of the little jobs out there. He wasn't going to waste his time doing factory work, doing shop work, because he had a media studies 2-1, and to me that meant nothing. I've never been to uni, so, you know, to me it was a bit of paper, and I told him that all the time. Just because you've got this piece of paper doesn't make you better than me. But he seemed to think it did. which is why he decided to claim job seekers rather than go out and get any old job.
And was your feeling that you obviously do work and you work hard, and was your feeling that you didn't feel it was fair that you were contributing to a system that was keeping him in a position where he could continue to do that, that you thought he should be going out and getting any job he could in order to come off the system? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
So the degree was sort of neither here nor there. You just thought he should be self-supporting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's the same age as me. I've got 2 children. He's got a little boy. He lived with his granddad. His granddad paid everything for him, paid all his bills. He had no worries, no outgoings, nothing. And I sort of think, I have to work really hard to support my family. I have rent to pay, I have bills to pay. Obviously, I want to do the things with my children that he does, but he gets to do it off the benefits where I actually have to work to do it. And he thought that was acceptable, and I couldn't get my head around that.
So when the programme makers came to you and said, would you like to do this programme, what was your feeling before you met Liam or before you took part in the programme? Did you have pretty fixed ideas? Were you already a bit suspicious that some people maybe are on the benefit system and shouldn't be, or that it's too much of a kind of comfort blanket?
Yeah, I mean, I know people that claim benefits that shouldn't. I think everyone knows people that claim benefits that shouldn't. And I think from someone that's always, I mean, I've worked since I was 16. I didn't go to college. I decided to go and do a YTS scheme because then I get to earn and learn at the same time.
Right.
And I've always worked so hard, and I think it's nice. It was nice to do the show to meet people that actually decided to claim benefits and to find out why they wanted to claim benefits rather than work, because I hadn't really sort of gone into too much detail with people as to why, although I knew they were on benefits, I've never really asked why they wanted to be and sort of looked into their reasonings and their side of why they wanted to.
And you obviously had no sympathy with Liam. Did you have sympathy with any of the others that the other people met? Any of the other people when you watched the programme, did you feel?
No, not really, to be honest. I'm quite a harsh person, unfortunately, and I think that's personally because I have always worked. I really think there is a job out there for everybody, even if you are disabled or you do have disabilities, that actually they can do something to earn money. I do agree that some people need to be on benefits, but I think too many people see it as an easy option, and I think that programme sort of showed that as well, a little bit.
Yeah, it was a very interesting way of coming at the debate, I think, because it was this sort of meeting of two different kind of minds. And you say there we all know people on benefits. I mean, I suppose one of the things we should address is that, you know, listening to us all, we clearly, do we all know people coming from benefits? I mean, I guess our backgrounds are not necessarily the same as the people that we're talking about. Emma, I presume you're not from a council estate?
No, but my father is, and my whole one side of my family is lives on an estate just outside London, so it's not too much of a stretch. But yes, I do feel that part of these debates gets very po-faced middle class, and I don't like that.
I don't think you have to be on a council estate to be on benefits, though, do you? That's a bit
No,
stereotypical.
sorry, what I meant was that are the people making these programmes sufficiently in touch with the people that they're portraying, or is there a sort of, I mean, television is a very, very middle class organisation, which, you know, that to what degree are we making these shows with real empathy, or to what degree are we sort of just turning the cameras on them? And, you know, this is the point of this article was, is it just exploitation?
Well, I think as filmmakers, part of what you do is you go and discover worlds that you don't know. You know, Keogh have made films in jungles and on rubbish tips. You know, we weren't brought up on rubbish tips. Can we go and make a film there? I think if you can listen and be empathetic and aim to understand and to sort of convey what people have to tell you, then I think you can. I think you do need local knowledge, though. You need fixers. You need people who understand how things work to sort of act as a sort of medium for you. But I mean, that's what filmmakers do. You can't say you can't make a film about murderers if you haven't murdered someone. You know, you go and make films about worlds that you're interested in.
But yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you think the nature of these shows is different now? I mean, when you think back to television, which has always been a very middle-class place to work, I suppose. But I suppose some of these programs, when they were made in the past, were made by program makers who were passionately left-wing, who believed in a kind of socialist agenda, who wanted those programs to kind of make a political message. Do you think that's what they're doing these days? I mean, Skint...
That's certainly what we aim to do.
Totally.
Absolutely, certainly. I mean, we felt that worklessness is a major problem, and by worklessness, I mean people not working for long periods of time, people growing up not expecting to work, not aspiring to work, and that is, you know, it's not a good thing, and it's linked to other social problems, and we felt very, very strongly that this was a way of waving a flag and saying, you know, this is a big problem. You should know about this. You should be talking about this.
I mean, sort of pick up on that point, I agree with all those points, but I think the other thing that we're sort of not talking about, and I think we probably should, is that, of course, there is a sort of, and I don't feel afraid of saying it, I think one of the things that's happened in television recently is people are always looking for innovation, different ways of doing things, you want to reach an audience. I'm not afraid of saying I would like the programmes that I make, whether they're a straight observational documentary or something that's more structured like Nick and Margaret, I'd like it to reach a large audience. And I think that does mean that you are looking for ways of making the storytelling, you know, palatable and interesting to an audience, and that means defining who the interesting characters are, the lively characters are. And I think you are, you know, I'm sure you do, Emma, all the time, and I'm sure you did, Katie, in your edits for Skin. You think about ways of presenting the material in a way that is going to speak to as many people as possible. So I agree absolutely that there is a sort of strong social agenda behind these series, and that people are making these series with incredibly good intentions. Actually, I think it's dangerous to talk about whether these shows should be on television, because if they weren't, it would be a sort of form of censorship. But on the other hand, I do think that we live in a world where it's a creative endeavour, which means that you're also thinking about what's the most interesting form for this programme, what's the most interesting way of interviewing these people. That, you know, there are choices in everything we do, whether that's the voiceover on Skint or it's the fact Nick and Margaret were in the benefits programme. It's not that we sort of go, oh, this is just happening, let's just make a programme about people on benefits. You know, there are sort of editorial decisions made which are partly about bringing as large an audience as possible and a sort of diversity of views. And weirdly, I think there is a sort of important social message behind these programmes, but what I really felt with the Nick and Margaret benefits programme was I hoped people came away, and there was a real split on Twitter between those people who were going, those awful benefits claimants, how dare they shouldn't be taking money from the welfare state, and then other people going, oh, those poor people, they should be getting so much more money and we need to support them. And actually, I think that was, for me, that was a sign of success. That people...
But it was, Nick and Margaret was packed with information, wasn't it? Because Nick and Margaret themselves confessed that they were ignorant about the welfare system. So it was a way in to sort of, and also, forgive me, but it was a BBC programme, so it was incredibly fairly balanced and portrayed. So, you know, you disagreed, but the other people didn't. And so that, you know, by the end of it, you did feel you were getting this incredibly balanced view between those who thought the level of benefits was justified.
Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think...
But Skint is a slightly different thing, isn't it? It really is just putting the cameras on them and letting it all unfold. But of course, there's some rather clever editing going on afterwards, isn't there? I mean, what you're doing in the edit and with that voiceover is I mean, it's not just purely letting the cameras roll and them speaking for themselves. There is a sort of artistry to what you're doing with it. Of course, there's a
craft in the edit. Absolutely, there's a craft. And I mean, I completely agree with Tom. If you care about what you're doing, if you believe it's got something important to say, you want it to be watched by as many people as possible. And yes, you do want to make it, you know, enjoyable and not a sort of a hard watch, not a kind of, you know, something, oh, I have to sit down, I feel I ought to watch this. You know, we wanted it to be something that people came to and wanted to watch, because the more people that watched it, the more people would be talking about the issues.
But I also think in television we sort of still have a sort of false sort of polarity between important documentary and entertaining, and I sort of think you can do both.
Yes.
Entertaining sort of sometimes feels to me, and I'm not an entertainment commissioner, nor is Emma, but it's not. I don't think entertaining is a dirty word. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it should be, and I think
no, as long as it's truthful,
yes,
and it
exactly.
has empathy. And actually, that's one of the problems I've got about kind of this debate and the words poverty porn. I think actually, that is where the lack of empathy is. I think that whoever kind of coined the phrase and did all of this is kind of like slightly self-flagellating. I want to watch it, but it makes me happy, and it makes me feel like shit. It's not my problem, and so I kind of get slightly offended by the debate, because I think that all these shows are really good and they're really important, and I think that they really show what's going on in 2013 in a way that they just wouldn't have done 10 years ago. So, you know, it's a little bit po-faced for me, and I agree with you. You know, we've got Ofcom codes. You know, we're not doing bad stuff in edits. You know, we're just being truthful. And I think, you know, with the voiceover that was criticised with Skint, but it's totally authentic to the way that community speak. And Dean was a script consultant, wasn't he?
He was, yes. He worked very
So,
closely
you
on
know, again, it's like, oh, come on.
Dean was a script consultant, was
Yes,
he?
yes.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, he read through all the scripts. We talked about them in detail with him. We talked about the phrasing. We talked about the attitudes. So, you know, he was involved in every bit of the voiceover, putting the voiceover together.
Did you see Skint, Stevie?
I did.
What did you think?
I must admit, I have mixed views on it, to be completely honest. I mean, I don't watch a great deal of TV anyway, because either I'm working or I've got kids' programmes on, because children like their TV, don't they? But what made me watch Skint was how they were behaving in the preview clips for it, because they were up to no good, the people on there, and I thought, well, that'll be interesting to watch. And when I watched it, I couldn't help but think they were playing up to the cameras. Well, would they really be like that, or is it the fact?
They categorically weren't. I mean, you know, we were there for 7 months. We had the most detailed protocol in terms of working with them, and really complicated compliance, and everything there is observed.
Yeah.
It's observed, classic, old-fashioned, observational actuality. And
did they know you were observing them though? Through
yes,
the house?
They did. They got used to us, and we were there for so long, and we'd spent so much time with them. They got used to us, which meant that we could get quite incredible access that I think not many people managed to get.
I still think they might have played up. I don't know. I mean, I come from.
So Emma talked about the fact that, you know, that the effect of watching Skint was that you felt sympathetic. Did you feel sympathetic towards them?
I did say I was a bit harsh at the start of this, but no. I don't think I did, because I find it hard to believe that people could boast about shoplifting and boast about sort of breaking rules and regulations all the time.
I think it was part of their life. I mean, I don't think they would talk about it in, you know, as saying it was boasting. It was a fact of their lives.
Yeah.
You know, it was how Tracy survived. That's what she did, and it was part of the sort of economy there, that, you know, she would shoplift, she sold the goods to other people who wanted, like Dean, who wanted cheap food, you know, she borrowed money from the wall, and, you know, that there was this, you know, it was a part of life.
Yeah, but it also showed that she'd been shoplifting for so long and nothing actually was really ever done, because she still kept getting let out and kept shoplifting again and shoplifting again.
That's right.
And I just found it hard to get my head around that, but again, it's maybe because I'm brought up in a different sort of community to what that is.
She's got problems with addiction. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what she's battling, and she's in a cycle of behaviour. And I think it's quite an interesting point, because I think all of the main characters in Skin are kind of struggling with social issues, and they're issues that are connected to worklessness. So, you know, maybe in the second film we had a couple of people, girls who'd had babies young, one girl trying to get her baby back from social services.
So you have a 21-year-old that had 5 kids?
Yeah.
Again, I couldn't get my head around that. Why keep having children if you're in that? I think it's because I couldn't put myself in that situation that I found it hard to sort of digest.
Well, for the people that were in that film, it was every day. I mean, that was their lives.
Pound Shop was. So I think that was Caroline Ahern on the voiceover. And again, quite similar in tone.
Yeah, I mean, I think humour is probably, I think what's sort of come out of this session and hearing everyone talk is that sort of a lightness of touch, finding the fact that people's lives aren't always sort of doom and gloom, that actually...
But isn't that, sorry to interrupt, but isn't that where this sort of accusation comes from, that, you know, that those filmmakers who were making these programmes in the past, who had this political kind of crusading sense about them, would not have put an amusing voiceover on it because they didn't want it confused with some sort of form of
No, I think you're right.
entertainment.
I think the interesting thing is that there is a sort of, if you look back at sort of those films that have been made over the last 20 years, and I think this is true of some of the films we're talking about now, there's a sort of otherness, a sort of stately, I am not these people, I have come here to observe you, but we are not you, we are somehow different to you. And I sort of, I didn't make Pound Shop Wars, it comes from the department that I work in, but I absolutely stand by it in the sense that voice, in the sense that I actually think it's really worrying when it feels like somehow these people are so far removed from who we are. I actually find that the thing that worries me most is that there is a sense when you were talking about class in television and where we're from, and I don't think you need to be from a council estate in order to make a series about a council estate, but what I do think it gets really dangerous is when you sort of treat the issues and complexities of those people's lives as though they're almost a sort of different species from us, as though somehow their lives are so remote that we couldn't possibly understand it other than to sort of watch it unfold. Do you know what I mean? And I think actually what Pound Shop Wars does, I mean, I think it sort of weirdly is like a doc version of The Apprentice. You know, there's a sort of like, is it going to be him or is it going to be him? And they all have horrible cheap suits. But actually, I think what Pound Shop Wars does is take something that we're all worried about. Fundamentally, we all, in the recession, and apparently we're out of recession now, but we all worry about money and we all want a bargain. And actually, I think our relationship with money has changed. I think there was a time when people would have been afraid to go, I got that at a discount. And actually, it's almost sort of a badge of pride. You know, you hear everyone going, oh, how much did you get that for? And whether that's a sort of Selfridges sale or it's Pound Shop sale, people love a bargain. And so I think, but you're right, there's something about, I mean, not that I sound it, but I am originally from the north, and I do find the way that the north is seen as somewhere that's very, very far away from London really weird. Like, I can get to my parents' house in 2 hours, but it's sort of like the sense that the north, it's got a sort of different place, and I do think that's an issue. I do. I mean, I think it's interesting that when I look at the clip of Welcome to Lagos and Skint, I mean, I think they're both really beautifully made and artfully made, but it makes Scunthorpe look like it's somewhere very, very, very far away, and it's not. You know, it's sort of on our doorstep, and that's not it's not criticism, Katie, but it's interesting that there's a sort of sense of remoteness in it, which I think is then pulled back by the voiceover, which isn't remote. It makes it feel like it's warm, inclusive, that you're part of it. But I do think that otherness is the thing that sort of occasionally worries me, where I go...
Well, I really am going to come to questions shortly, but why do you think these programmes have become so popular? Because I know they've all been doing pretty well. And I guess in the last recession, maybe the one that really bit in the 70s, I mean, we were turned on by much more aspirational programmes. We wanted to look at the lives of the rich and famous rather than be constantly reminded that we were all having quite a hard time. Why do you think it's different this time around? Why do you think people are enjoying these programmes like Skimp, which, you know, can be quite upsetting despite the kind of jokey voiceover?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what Emma said, I mean, we are living in times where the gap between the richest and the poorest is widening. So it's part of our world, and I think that in the end is the reason why people are interested.
But is it because they want to watch them and think, oh, you know, however bad my life is, it's not that bad? Or do you think it's that they just want to be reminded that...
I think it's very hard to say, you know, as a filmmaker, why someone is watching something. I can't police why someone watches a programme. You can only feel that something is important, do your very best to convey it as fairly as you can and communicate that to people. You know, people watch things for a whole load of reasons, and I think particularly when things start to rate, people are usually watching for a range of reasons. As Tom was saying, you had very different responses to your programme.
I think it's also worth saying that at the same time as the programmes we're talking about rated well, one of the biggest hits from our department last year was Claridge's.
Exactly.
And Claridge's is obviously not poverty porn. It's sort of luxury
Posh
porn. Yeah, exactly. If we're going to use the porn, keep with the porn terminology. And I think part of the reason that Claridge's did so well is not just the obvious, which is that it's an extraordinary world and it's aspirational. artificial and the chandeliers twinkling. It's also that it's sort of a closed world in one way, in the sense that not everyone gets to go to Claridge's, so let us take you inside it. But also I think, you know, this is anecdotal, but apparently after the first transmission they had a sort of crash in terms of that their telephones crashed because people wanted afternoon tea there. It's the fact you can actually go and have a bit of it, even if it's a cup of tea or a cake. And I sort of fancy it now. I'm like, I really want to go and have a scone there. And I think there's a sort of element of
I'm not sure people are dying to go to Scunthorpe.
But I think also that, because I do actually think that it is really shocking what's going on in Scunthorpe, and I don't think that I don't see it going on around me a lot. So I kind of really relate to the fact that it feels like, fucking hell, what's going on there? I didn't know. But also there's natural drama, you know, it's amazing storytelling, and what is going on in the UK is very dramatic at the moment. Yeah. And so Skin has a lot of drama in it, and I think that really, really pulls people in, because, you know, every beat you're sort of kind of, shit, this is real, but this is very shocking to me, and you know. But
it's also, I think, that we're all uncertain. You know, we live in a time sort of uncertainty. There are no sort of givens. You know, the economy's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone down. We're now sort of out of it. So actually, what you're watching unfold, in some ways, is an extreme version of what everyone's sort of feeling, which is a sort of sense that we're in turbulent, unpredictable times, that all the promises that were made to people like Liam about what his degree would give him and us, about all the houses that people bought, the promises turned out in some cases not to be true. So,
but I think it's quite interesting that you're talking very sympathetically about these people, whereas Stevie, I think, you know, is coming to these programs much less sympathetic. I mean, actually quite cross with the fact that people are sort of getting away with it, I think was your phrase, and that I think she doesn't have your reaction, Emma, which is, oh my God, it's so shocking. And you know, presumably a proportion of your viewers are having that reaction too.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a healthy kind of mix, and I think that is actually what makes the films even more important, because if you looked on Twitter, Skin, half the people felt, actually more people felt like you and half the people less felt like me. So I think that's great, you know, it's like shared viewership.
But I also think that there's a moment where they come together. I mean, I can watch the programmes and feel angry, not angry at the individuals, but angry at the waste of human potential. Yeah. You know, people that should be having opportunities in life and should be leading fulfilling lives are stuck in really complicated, difficult spirals of behaviour. Some of it's their fault, some of it's not their fault. It's a whole mix of things. But, you know, I can feel angry too, while sympathising with them.
Let's take some questions from the floor. First of all, I think we've got Abigail from the Roundtree Foundation.
The Joseph Roundtree Foundation. Really interesting discussion, something we've been thinking a lot about at the foundation. And just listening to the discussion, I think it is conspicuous the absence of somebody living in poverty on the panel, or you are othering them, because the whole discussion is about these people, their lives. I mean, somebody said, oh, they love each other, as though people who live on benefits wouldn't love their family. So there is an objectification going on there. And I think I'd like to know, as commissioners and programme makers, whether you think about what the impact is of these programmes. You talk about your audiences, but remember, 1 in 5 people living in poverty in this country, they are your audiences. Those numbers are predicted to rise to 1 in 4 by 2020. And we know public attitudes are hardening towards people in poverty. So the media does have a massive role to play, I think, in terms of whether they confirm or undermine stereotypes. And listening to the discussion, it's really hit me about how kind of removed people are from the kind of lives of portrayed in your films. And I just wanted to know, you know, where back in the 60s, Cathy Come Home did inspire a generation to, you know, deal with homelessness. As poverty is about to rise, how are we going to sort of generate, how are we going to generate interest in reducing poverty?
Katie?
Well,
I think it was you who said they love each other, so I'm picking on you.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you know, just picking off some of those points one at a time. I mean, I didn't make the programme, so I didn't. But the people that we went to a lot of care when we were finding the people that made the programme, and Not all of them.
What do you mean by that? The
producer-directors?
producer-directors?
The producer-directors, the associate producers, the researchers, the people who were actually there, and a large proportion of them came from council estates and some from quite similar backgrounds to the people that were making the programmes. I can't claim that I do, but we certainly went to a lot of trouble to find people from similar backgrounds to make the programmes. Sorry, so some of the other stuff you were saying is your people watching. So what responsibility do we have?
Well, I suppose it's also, is Skint going to change perceptions? Is it going to actually do anything?
Well, it has done things already. So, certainly where we were filming, there have been some big changes made. So the wall that features a lot in the series has now been pulled down. A task force has been set up for youth unemployment. Connor, who's in the first film, is now has an apprenticeship. Tracy's on a drug rehab programme, and Dean is trying to find work. Hasn't found it yet, but he's trying to find work. So it has made a difference to those people's lives. Do we have a responsibility to, when we represent people who are poor? Yes, we do, and we thought long and hard throughout the production, throughout the edit, about how we were representing people. In the end, Skint isn't about all poor people. It isn't about all people who are on benefits. It's about this group of people who were experiencing worklessness and the social problems they were grappling with.
Sure. Television is so powerful and it reaches such a mass audience, way more than Twitter does. Yeah. So there is an effect of generalisation there. I mean, that happens naturally. And what I think a lot of people in poverty would say, because this is what our research shows, is they feel victimised, they feel stigmatised, and also there's a blame game going on. Ultimately people end up blaming them for getting themselves in this situation, and poverty is not like that. It's a result of a whole complex series and often issues that you can't explore in a 30-minute panorama documentary. And I just think that it's an extremely powerful medium, and these programmes have served to entrench stereotypes, and people in poverty will tell us this. And yes, they do want a voice, but they are scared of giving that voice now because of the way that they're portrayed and represented. I mean, Richard Bilton's documentary on the Shadworth estate, that really did. He spent a lot, and he understands the issues. He's worked with the JRF before. He understands the issues, the complexities of living in poverty. But what happened there is the community felt totally disenfranchised by the way it was portrayed. When the media when we release reports on poverty, all the press come to us and say, can you get us case studies? We can't, because people are scared to go on and talk about their situation because there's a lot of shame around poverty. And of course, programmes like Shameless don't help. So I think we're kind of at a tipping point, I think, because there is a plethora of these programmes. They're serving to entrench stereotypes at a time when people are facing real hardship and it's getting worse. And the campaigning charities have a real challenge, I think, to challenge.
Emma, do you think they're stereotypes?
No, I don't. I think it's real life. And actually, from a Channel 4 perspective, our duty of care, we take it so seriously. I personally do as a commissioner, and the things that we have in place to look after people who honour us by letting us into their lives is vast. That's number one. And number two, no, I don't. I mean, to see that scene of Dean and his son sitting and looking at the steel factory where they still should be able to work and they can't because the industry's fucked. I didn't really know that. I'm sorry, but I didn't. And it really gave me kind of empathy, and I thought, shit, what do you do about these communities? And we have to be real about these communities. We can't just go in and say, well, we've got to not show any drug taking or show a really sanitized middle class view, because that's not real. And would you rather that 4 million people hadn't seen how hard it was to live on that estate? Is that what you would prefer?
I think there are more than 4 million people who know how hard life is.
I mean, that
and
is
who
the
are not
problem, Emma,
working.
isn't it? That although you didn't know about the steel industry, all those people who are living
Okay, fine.
day to day with
Okay,
that
fine.
did know.
Okay, fine, but it did get people talking. And I'm sorry, it is really voices. I don't know how else to do it. You know, we have a medium
that's my
here.
challenge
We're
to
trying.
you as programme makers is,
Well, we're
is there a
trying.
way? Is there a way of doing
But
it?
I think what's interesting is there should be a plethora of programmes. That there are, you know, this was one series, you know, one approach, one group of people. I think it would be fantastic to see lots and lots more in this subject area. I think it's really, really
But they
important.
don't get commissioned.
But I actually
they
don't think that's
do,
true.
they do, actually,
Yeah, I don't
they
think that's
do.
true. I mean, I think what's weird is that we're talking about lots and lots of programs, but if you think about them, they're all different. Their approach is different. I don't think we can lump them all together and go, there are loads of programs we've made which are about poverty, because actually I think that reinforces the stereotype you're talking about. Actually, these shows are all different. They have a different objective. They're with different people. And what I think is really interesting about your research, and I'm not refuting it, but it's just if you hear about Channel 4 talking about Skint and their relationship with their contributors, and I know from People Like Us, which was a series set in Harper Hay, that all the contributors who took part were really happy to have taken part, happy with the films, were collaboratively part of the finished programme. So it feels strange to me that you go, you're struggling to get people to talk about it, because I know sort of from the production teams that I've got, you know, shows that I've got in production, that we aren't having that struggle, because actually people want to give voice to their experience, their lives. And actually, I worry more about the idea that we should shut those people down and they shouldn't be talking.
We've got lots of, I think we've got
And
some
we do
hands
have
up.
a real
so
range. You know, the Council House series, you know, I'd be interested to see what you feel about that if you watch that. And, you know, I've got lots of really good, amazing filmmakers, Penny Wilcock, Sean McAllister, who are all commissioned to make amazing shows for me at the moment about this kind of stuff. So it's about range and reach.
We've got a question at the back, I think. I'm sorry.
Hi. I was just thinking that at some point it was mentioned about kind of documentaries with a political crusading sense. I think I've quoted that directly. And, you know, taking into account perhaps the documentaries made by Grierson, the first documentaries perhaps with the BBC, where there was a very strong, certain political point about housing issues, for example, that was very definite. It was very one-sided, holding its hands up, saying, you know, there's an issue here. Then perhaps on the other hand, moving through to Keller, Patrick Keller, more recent years, Channel 4 in the 90s, where clearly his documentaries were very ironic, but nevertheless having a massive dig at Margaret Thatcher, loss of jobs, etc. But I wonder, you know, can we really speak so straightforward about this now? You know, would a politically crusading documentary, if we're going to use those terms, be commissioned in that sense? Yeah. And if it wouldn't, perhaps, is the ob doc the sort of only way to approach these very complex and sophisticated issues? Because I'm not sure if that the problem is the filmmaker as being middle class, you know, working class, upper class, or whatever, but can we really speak in this sense now that is very straightforward? And
you mean was it a thing of the past? Tom, would you be able to do a political crusading doc at the BBC?
Depends what you mean by political. I mean, we had a film last year which went out at 10:35 about food banks, and since then food banks have featured on a number of different series and programmes, both within documentaries on the BBC and elsewhere on other channels. But that was a very sort of, if you like, straight observational documentary, and probably all the more powerful for it. And I don't think it was political in the sense that we weren't going, isn't it bloody awful that there are food banks here? But we were shining a light on something that personally, this is my personal view, I found genuinely shocking. The idea that there are people who are hungry in Britain to the point where we need food banks for people to be able to eat.
But sorry, the BBC, let's say, with Grierson, you know, made that very politically crusading, I'm quoting from the panel, point of view. You know, so that is not possible anymore.
Well, it's not that it's not possible. It's not possible. We work with, I mean, obviously we work with a range of filmmakers, and I still believe that there are filmmakers, directors, whatever you want to call them, who have a take on the world and have a view of the world. Yeah. And so if we mean political by that, as in they have a view and they're shining a light on something and that's their take on it, then absolutely. But I don't think it's my job as a commissioner, not my job as a director, I'm not a director, but my job as a commissioner to go, I want to make a film about this, and my view before we started making it is is going to be like this, and this is the point that I want to make at the end of it. But I absolutely believe that filmmakers still have the autonomy, and I welcome those filmmakers to have a voice of their own, a take of their own, because otherwise we're a bit lost if we don't have that.
I mean, I'm sort of bang on about it quite a lot, and I'm a trustee of the Griersons, and I think I say all the time, I want filmmakers to come and pitch to me and tell me the stories and the political statements that they want to make, and ensure that it will be a good film.
What's the balance, would you say, in your commissioning between sort of ob-doc and author-doc?
Well, kind of not enough, actually. I would love more orthodox.
You mean it's too balanced in the...
I have a lot more obs films, but I can totally take an orthodox. I just don't get offered them very much. And I feel sometimes that we're in a world where people don't know what they want to say about the world. And I'm like, I want to know, actually, so can you come and tell me? So, it's not for want of trying, and I have commissioned quite a few that will be coming down the track.
I think it's also worth saying as well that, on a slightly different subject area, Keogh have made programmes which are directly campaigning. So, Hugh's Fish Fight has changed, law. So I think it is possible.
Let's just take, is there one more question? I think we've got time for one more. Yes, halfway down. Thank you.
Hi, Leah from local television. My question is, seeing as though Dean is still looking for work and he did such a great job as a script advisor, perhaps Q or Channel 4 might want to employ him and get him off benefits.
It's a good idea.
Very nice thought.
Is Dean completely happy with it? What's life like for Dean post-transmission? I
saw him on Tuesday, actually. So there were some difficult times for him during transmission.
Because of the reaction to the film?
Because of the reaction, and some of the stuff that's in the tabloids, some of the people who weren't featured in the programme but kind of wishing it had been made somewhere other than Scunthorpe. But he is now feeling very good about it. I mean, the interesting thing about Dean is that, he is in a position where it's a big family, and it is difficult to then find work to, feed and keep and house that family, and that's a sort of trap in some way that you get with.
Well, Stevie would say because his benefits.
You can say he should have got into that position, and I think that's
Mm.
completely valid, and if we think it's not right that you can carry on having very big families, we should change the law. But in a sense, once you're in that position, what do you do?
Could I just add that now that Dean has become a mini-celebrity in his area, how employable he now is?
Have you made things worse for him?
He doesn't feel so. So, I don't know.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. We're going to have to wrap up. But thank you very much. Thanks to our panellists, and thanks to all of you. Thank you.